Hello and welcome to Revolutionise Your Love Life. Do you want to know more about love relationships, what makes them work, how to create the one of your best dreams? Do you want to be in a really healthy, juicy love relationship? In these podcasts, we will give ideas and practical advice to light your way. Whether you're looking for a love partner, already in a relationship you wish could be better, or leaving one that has run its course, there will be something to inspire, empower, and support you. Revolutionise Your Love Life is a fortnightly podcast where you will access the knowledge and wisdom of love experts and relationship coaches from across the world to help you find true fulfillment in love. I am your host, Heather Garbutt. Welcome. Hello, everybody. I'm here today with the wonderful Hilary Briggs. It's a real privilege to have her here. And we're going to talk about overwhelm and how to overcome it, really how to develop resilience in yourself, in your work, in your life, specifically as well, your love life, I hope. So, once described as Britain's most exciting executive under 40 by Business Age magazine, Hilary trained as an engineer at the University of Cambridge before embarking on a corporate career with Rover Group, Whirlpool Europe and Laird Group plc. For the past 20 years, she's supported smaller businesses in improving performance and managing changes, including implementing new systems, instigating culture change programs, and integrating post-acquisition processes. And in the last 7 years, she's taken up triathlons, transforming herself from a low-grade amateur to a member of the Team GB age group team. She is the 2023 European champion and World Championship silver medalist, having overcome a major Achilles injury along the way. Hilary has learned the importance of resilience in all her activities and how to effectively increase it. And on top of all of this, she's also an international award-winning TEDx speaker. Thank you so much for joining us, Hilary. Welcome.
Thanks very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
So first of all, tell us about that Achilles injury, because, wow, that's a big deal.
Well, it's a bit of I'll try to keep the story as short as possible on it, but I had managed to wreck my Achilles initially several decades before playing tennis. And interestingly, at the time it was when I was at Rover in production management under a lot of pressure and stress. And I remember one time saying, look, I'm heading off now. I'm going off and I've got a game of tennis planned with a friend after work, and played for about 40 minutes. Can still remember pushing off from one side of the court to get a ball. And it just felt like someone had crept up behind me and whacked me on the back of the leg with a racket. Of course, I fell to the ground, and looking round, there's no one there. So you're trying to think, well, what happened? So I hadn't actually ruptured the tendon totally, but it was quite a serious injury. But at the time, I wasn't recommended surgery, and it did, recover pretty well. So I was able to get back to doing what I wanted to do after a few months and so on. So wind the clock forward a few decades, I just started doing triathlon the year before. So this is in 2017 and I'd had slight tendonitis, and I'd seen a physio. I was doing things and actually felt, oh, seems to be improving. And I just had a stupid fall off the bike, not just my runabout bike. I was actually picking up shopping. I think whether I was slightly unbalanced the bike, I'm not quite sure what happened, but I just stalled it, fell to the side. I had my feet in cleats, and whether it was taking the foot out or when I hit the ground, I'm not quite sure. It hurt, not as much as the original injury, but yeah, it was damage. And what it turned out, there was a monster tear that when I went for ultrasound a couple of days later, that as the guy moved my ankle, this sort of moon-shaped, crescent-shaped tear. So it was a case of don't pass go straight to A&E. And I think looking at it afterwards, so the damage was so bad after I had an operation on it, and the surgeon said he'd never seen a tendon in such bad shape in a living person. he added. It was like, oh my goodness. So he'd actually replaced the tendon with another one. He had warned me they might have to do that. So I must admit, I think, how did that happen? Well, it was the combination of the old injury, I think, starting to put more load on it with the sport, but also I think what I hadn't appreciated was, as you get older, the muscles are deteriorating. And what I hear now, actually, I think it could be even as early as 25, certainly 30, your muscle mass is going down unless you're actively doing something. So me arrogantly thinking, well, it's warm-ups and other stuff. I don't need to do that. I'm going out cycling and running and so on. Well, I've learned the hard way that's not enough. And I think particularly for women, this strength work, resistance work is really, really important. So I think that's kind of how it happened. And well, I was worried and frightened that I wasn't going to walk properly again. I know sort of replacing a tendon sounded like a big job to me. I think it was quite a rare procedure. So whatever the physio told me at the hospital, I did it. I made copious notes and I did it religiously. And I think that actually was the step that moved me in my triathlon journey from low grade amateur to doing much, much more. And I'm just really gobsmacked at what I've been able to achieve. But it was an 18-month recovery from the operation to getting back doing a standard distance triathlon. And I just kept doing the exercises because that's all I knew what to do. And then, equipped with a proper bike as well, I came first in my age group in a couple of events in 2019. And it was like, wow, it's amazing. And I started to hear about Team GB and these international events. I had no idea there was anything like that. And then it was, well, could I possibly do that? It just seemed so far-fetched. And I realized, with a bit of research online, I needed to take around 30 minutes or so off my time. I was about 3 hours 10 on the events that I was doing, which, half an hour off that seemed like a major challenge. But I just set to it and bit by bit was making progress. And yeah, I was doing an event yesterday, and I mean, each event obviously is slightly different, but just over 2 hours 42. So, and I'm still getting better in some ways, and I know I've still got scope. So it's, I think what I've demonstrated, this thing about muscle deterioration, you can do something about it, and it's important. So, yeah.
So people may be asking, what's this got to do with love and relationships? Magnificent. It is. But for me, this is absolutely fundamental because it's self-care. The things that you've talked about in your story, you recognize in retrospect, you were under a lot of pressure and stress when you did the first injury.
Yes.
Yeah? And you realized that you could see that your body was aging in retrospect and that you needed to do much more. This has come to me at the ripe old age of 65. And I'm doing now resistance training with Kim Rahia and doing lots more walking, minding my eating, minding my alcohol intake, because I can feel when I get a lot of pressure and stress, the weakness in my body to manage that. And for me, if you've got all of that going in on your body, what is left of you to have any sort of relationship with anybody? It's your body, it's your mind, it's your emotions. There's nothing left to give. And there's also a greater difficulty to receive. So there we go. That's my take on things.
Yeah, I would totally agree. And I think what's interesting, the other thing that was going on when I had this major injury, I was also under a lot of pressure and stress at work. So I think there's a lesson that if you're under stress, you're much more likely, that again, the body perhaps is tense, or there's, who knows, all sorts of things. I'm sure there's lots of chemical things going on in the body as well, that you're vulnerable. And so I think it's one of the things that interests me with overwhelm. I think it's why it's such an important topic to be aware of your state and be able to manage things around you that you keep within safe limits, let's say.
Yeah. So there's I think it's podcast 45. I talk about the basic needs for your relationship, and it's knowing what your own needs and feelings are first. So that happens on a physical level as well as the mental level. Please tell me your experience of it.
Yes, absolutely. I think uh, it's as you say. I think we've got a limit or a capacity, and each individual's going to have a different capacity. But one thing that I came across, which illustrates, I think, what's happening under pressure and stress very well, is from a man called Dr. Peter Nixon, who in the 70s was working, he called the human function curve. And it basically is, as you increase stress, if you do have no stress at all, you're probably just going to sit on the couch. You're not actually going to do anything. So stress actually is a good thing, but it goes up. But what you'd expected or like to think that you keep pushing yourself and your performance will keep increasing. Actually, it reaches a plateau and then starts going down. And if you keep pushing yourself beyond that point, then you're heading for breakdown and burnout. And I think that's where, I suppose, early in my career, when I was in production management in the car industry, massive pressure, colleagues were having breakdowns and panic attacks. I was probably on the verge of breakdowns at time. But what I noticed, there was one particular day I woke up and I had this, actually it hurt to breathe. And I thought, I was worried about that. It's the only time I've called out a GP. And by sort of lunchtime, it had morphed into a backache. And the guy gave me painkillers and so on. I called another guy back in a couple of days because it was still there. And a more experienced GP came out, asked me a few questions. What sort of work was I doing? And when I said production manager at the car business, he's sort of rolled his eyes and said, not another one. So, it was a lot of people under pressure. But my learning from it was actually my body was telling me something. So the backache, my simple interpretation of that was I was pushing myself too hard. So it did recover fairly quickly, but it became my warning sign, because if I suddenly got a little twinge in the back, it's like, okay, I need to literally back off here. And I learned to manage that. I haven't had the problem for years now, but I think there might be other things that come up, and I do my best to be aware of how I am and what's going on, because my belief is that you can ignore these things, but actually they come back in a more damaging form. And actually, in the last few years, I think, having had this Achilles operation, dealing with that and a high stress work again, I got shingles. And I think that, again, I look at that and think, yeah, that was my body saying stop. So I think learning, even if a simple thing is a 1 to 10 scale on waking up, how am I today? I have, because I do my sport, I have a Garmin watch, which has an interesting feature called body battery, which I don't know the exact algorithm details, but it's a compilation of heart rate variability, stress, and so on. And it gives you a 0 to 100 rating of your sort of battery level. And it's interesting on looking at the impact of sleep. So after a good night's sleep, bounce back to 100 pretty much, unless I've totally wiped out. Yesterday with the triathlon, it did took a bit of a pasting during the day. But it's interesting when you look at the impact either of illness. So when actually the COVID vaccination, the very first vaccination, what was fascinating, overnight my body battery actually went down. So you could see my body was fighting something. I did get COVID, having had even 2 or 3 jabs, and it didn't recover for about 3 days. And so that's interesting, that I think if you have some sort of illness, it's not gonna help you're being able to deal with whatever your sources of overwhelm. And I think the other thing I've noticed, if I have alcohol, even a couple of glasses of wine, which, let's face it, we have quite a boozy culture, I think, in this country, and go out and share a bottle of wine with someone, that I know will have quite devastating effects on my sleep recovery normally. So I think research I came across recently by a company called Utopia was saying under stress, that's 1 in 6 people attempted to hit the bottle, and a glass of wine, let's do that. I think my learning from my own experience of monitoring things, even a glass of wine or something, it's not going to help. And I think having that awareness and find other ways that you can do things to reduce or improve your physical side. Nutrition, people might be hitting the chocolate, or we've all got potential addictions and things that are going on, and I think it's just being aware of what's really going on when you do that.
Yes, absolutely. And that tuning into your feelings and needs on an emotional level, you can extend that to a physical level as well, and really pinpoint the things that are in need of your attention. I completely agree with you about alcohol. I've loved wine all of my adult life, actually probably far too young in my juvenile life as well. You know, I won't go into all that, but I went to France as a 14-year-old, and they have wine with lunch. That's what you do. So it became part of my way of being. But I really have found, particularly since all the lockdowns, I was drinking much more, and I was much more depleted, just energyless. So I take that on board too. Now, do you need to say anything else about what overwhelm actually is? You've talked about some of the physical things and typical causes. Is there anything more?
Yeah, I think, my experience in work situations, what can lead to overwhelm, there might be specific things that go wrong. Operations, things do go wrong. And I suppose the most dramatic example I had was I was in charge of a group of factories in Germany, and I had one of the factories burned down. Thankfully, no one was injured, but we had the ability to stop about a third of the German car industry, because we were supplying to VW and Audi and all these people. So there was a bit of pressure on there, but it was a specific thing. So that's a dramatic experience, but it might be somebody, key person resigns, or there's some HR issue. There's going to be a whole plethora of things that can cause it. But I think there's also what are perhaps called chronic situations, where perhaps understaffing, people aren't trained, that just every day things aren't going quite as they should, and it just seems relentless. That it might be less, it's more dangerous in a way, because you think, oh, it's no big deal, but if it's going on all the time, it's just building the pressure. And I think that's where, as soon as you start getting the physical signs, in my experience, so it might be disturbed sleep, um, certainly panic attacks, aches and pains, it's your body saying do something, and ignore those signs at your peril.
And you see, for me, in my sort of psychotherapy hat, that is, by the time it gets to physical, you're in real trouble.
I
You
would say
really are.
yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it's learning, and I think when I found myself, the better and better awareness I've got, I'm able to pick things up earlier and ideally avoid them. So I think, again, in my experience, life doesn't bring things in a neat, handy sequence. So then, whilst there might be lots of work pressures, you might be on top of that or just about managing. But then if you have something in your personal life, could be, an illness or bereavement, relationship problems, that can just tip you over. So I think it's being able to have a sense of your whole system, and what you're dealing with is really important.
I really love that. For me, when I look at things, there is the just the primary self, mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, and all of those parts of yourself need taking care of. And as women in our culture, that's really difficult, because we are the designated carers, even these days.
Yes.
And if you add into that, from that basic care, then there's the care that goes outwards. We're generally the ones who drive relationships on an emotional level, and that takes quite a lot of focus and intensity. The same things, what do I feel, what do I need? There's all of that. What do they feel, what do they need, what do the children need, what does the grandmother need? And it becomes, I think my word for that is kaleidoscopic. And then you add a job into that, and somebody like me or you have been quite passionate about what we do and really intent, and lots of women are, then it's really key, I think, to come back and do those questionings. What do I need to resource me? And it might not be like 2 weeks off in the Bahamas. It might be I need a massage every week. It might be I need different nutrition. I don't know, might be I need to go and play squash. It might need to I need to express myself through painting or being in a choir. All of those things are really important.
Absolutely. And I've found in the past, actually, holidays, you think in a way that should be, the solution to things. But I think again with the tech and so on now, it can actually be more stressful, because if we're pushing a wave of things to do, then the thought of going away for a week, it's like, oh my goodness, I've got to get all this finished. And so there's an extra, beavering away to try and do that. You can go away and have a fantastic week, but when you come back, there's a whole pile of more things to do. So I work on the basis of trying to keep, in check all the way through as best I can. So keep things in balance. And I found if I have got overdone something, then it can take a few weeks actually rebalancing consciously. For me, exercise is one thing that's very important to me. And okay, now I'm definitely a bit on the obsessed side in my triathlon, but even before that, just going out for long walks, taking care, eating, getting good sleep. I think sleep is something that is massively underestimated, and being able to block out time and prioritize. I suppose the thing about looking after yourself, it's the instruction on aircraft, isn't it, about put your own oxygen mask on before helping others. And I think that's quite a good analogy, that if you're not looking after yourself, you're not going to be in the right state to look after and be aware of others.
Indeed. And I see that on the dating front. People say online dating is like having another job. If you haven't got your resources and you haven't done your emotional attention, and you're looking at dating other people, you won't be doing it from a really clear space where you can clearly choose. You're much more likely to be knocked about by the slings and arrows,
Yes,
than
yes.
than if you're really centered. So how would you say, let's just check out, we got all the signs of overwhelm. Have we got them named now here?
Yes, I think so. I think the summary would be listen to your body and pay attention to any little signs that things aren't quite as they should be.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's interesting because both of you and I are from the north, and I've noticed something recently, because just things we were talking about before we recorded, that for me, coming from South Yorkshire, it's almost considered, I think, shameful for a woman to care for herself. And it's been a big deal for me in terms of looking after my physical self. It takes to 65 to wake up to that. That could be important. So please, everybody else that's listening, do it when you're 30. I think most people who are younger tend to have a more of an attitude towards fitness. That's what I see. But certainly my generation. Whew.
Yeah, hopefully. I think again, it's finding what works for you individually. And okay, for me, exercise is important. I think there's enough scientific evidence out there that exercise is really important, but it might be, meditation, going to the theatre or crocheting. It's finding something that allows you to recharge and
Yes.
recuperate.
Yeah. My partner is an athlete from former times. He used to be one of those guys that could just do a backflip from standing,
Okay.
And we find our connection because he likes to do golf now and exercises that way, and he gets his 16,000 steps in a day.
Well,
But together we do dancing, and it's a modern jive, so it's quite fast. And there's lots of movements where your arms are over your head and twisting. So it's lots of good stuff for your shoulders. It's great. It's really great. And it's slightly aerobic. I don't think it's like running up a hill, but it's slightly aerobic.
yeah, I think it's the thing, isn't it? Even gardening, or it's finding something that you enjoy that I think you're getting multiple benefits from. is what it's about in my mind. So yeah.
Yes, something that allows you to express yourself in what's the most natural way to you. Yeah. So if you get into really serious overwhelm, what ways would you give to us to really regain control and calm?
Yeah, I think the things that I've learned, and again, I started this when I was in this production management role, and it's the times when you feel your head is jangling with all the things and worries and all the things you've got to do. And I found, and I still can get that happening from time to time, hopefully not too often, but it does happen, is to get a piece of paper. If the situation's not too serious, I might get away with a little record card or an A5 sheet of paper. If it's really bad, I might need a flip chart size of paper. And it's grabbing a cup of tea or a coffee, sitting down with this bit of paper and doing a brain dump. I love mind maps, and just getting all of the things out of the head and onto the paper. And it doesn't need to take long, obviously if there's lots going on, but probably 15 minutes or something should be enough to get the bulk of things out there. And then go away from that. You can come back and then test, would the world stop really if I didn't do any of those things? So you can go through, and whilst there might be it could be financial implications, reputation, and so on. It's being really, really harsh and say, would the world actually stop? Is there life and death? Now, some people will be involved in life and death decisions, but most of us are not. And I think it's getting that perspective and really testing it is important, because then you can start to home in on, okay, out of all this stuff that's on the paper, what are perhaps 3 or 4 things that really I do need to concentrate on? Now, one thing I've found as well, if I've got to that situation, I'm thinking, oh goodness, I promised to do this for someone. Actually pick up the phone and check with them. Say, look, I'm in a bit of a tricky spot here. Would you mind if I delayed that? And the typical response back is, oh yeah, no problem, we're behind at our end, so no problem. Now, I haven't had to do that very often at all, thankfully, but it's suddenly a big sigh of relief. You think, oh goodness. And you could easily, I could have worked myself up into a right lather thinking I've absolutely got to do this. Well, just pick the phone up. And I think that's something, perhaps my impression is the younger generation are less likely just to pick the phone up. I'm not sure whether that's valid or not, but that's my impression. And I think there's a lot to be had from just pick the phone up and speak to somebody. So out of all that, it's homing in on the sort of 3 or 4 things that, okay, no, these are priorities, and then being able to break them down. And this was something, again, in chaos of production management, finding 5 minutes a day to do something to make tomorrow better. Now, it's hard, I think, to really be honest and say, no, I haven't had 5 minutes. It will happen, does happen, but 5 minutes is enough to make one phone call, to send one email, even just to put a timer on and think for 5 minutes about, okay, what do I really need to do here? And that, the ability to break something down into those tiny chunks, I found really empowering, because I think when things are just happening, I envisage that as being in this spin cycle on a washing machine. You're just being flung around and you just want to scream, please would somebody stop? And it's a horrible feeling. Again, thankfully it doesn't happen that often, but it can. Whereas doing one thing and sending one email, even if it's at midnight or something, I think, okay, I've done something that's just nudged things forward. This change in feeling I found, and the sense that actually I am not totally in control, but I am doing something to make it better, is phenomenal. And doing that consistently, it doesn't have to be 100%, but 80-90% of the time, in over a 3-month period, it's amazing what progress can be achieved. So that to me is a sort of baseline. Things are really tough. How do we get back in control? That's mind map, really test the priorities, and then 5 minutes a day.
Yeah. How can I take the pressure off? How can I keep things simple? How can I take a breath?
Yes.
Yeah. So how can we build resilience and stop ourselves getting into this sort of state in the first place?
I take learning from my triathlon experiences in part and other things that I do, that actually, one of the first triathlons I did, the swim, I find the swim is always going to have surprises and challenges. But this one at Eastbourne, there was a massive current in the sea. I think it's probably normal there, but it was just made life very hard. And I realised, whilst I had done some sea swimming, I needed to get out more and do more practice in those sort of conditions or harsher conditions. So I think it's same with, well, you do it in harsh conditions, but safe environment. I mean, crazy. Say for speaking, public speaking, I've been a member of Toastmasters International for over 20 years, and that I call my learning laboratory, because it's an environment where I can test things out, put myself under pressure. They have speech contests, all sorts of things. And you think, well, why do you need more pressure? But it's being able to handle that. Then when you go into let's say a more important situation, work-related situation, important presentation, you've just got that much more in hand. You know how to control your nerves. And say with the triathlon, I know if there are waves and my face is being splashed or I can't see where I'm going, it's like, okay, oh, that's like that. I've had that before. Here's how I dealt with it. So it just gives you that confidence that I've been through worse situations. I can keep through. Maybe I need to go slower. Maybe I'm not going to be fast enough, but at least I can be safe and I can maintain progress.
Yeah, that's brilliant. So tell me what it is that you particularly would like to offer to people and where they can find you.
Okay, thanks very much. So I work with people one-to-one on mentoring, and perhaps that's about how to improve their business, get their plans clear. I'm a passionate believer in 90-day action plans, just to give that focus. I also do lunch and learns and interactive workshops in companies. And I love to speak at events, whether it's networking events for business owners, women's groups. I find the overwhelm message goes down well and resonates with particularly a lot of women. So I'm up for talking to all sorts of groups and spreading experience. I've had some experience at the coalface, as it were, and I think I love to help people. So probably the best way to contact me is through my website. It's Hilary Briggs, Hilary with one L, hilarybriggs.co.uk. And I've also got a TEDx speech that's out there as well. It should show up if you Google me. Mobile. Can perhaps put in the notes to the program too.
Yes, that's probably easier. Thank you. Well, thank you, Hilary. This has been really lovely. It feels to me like it sort of touches all the points of a woman's life, because many women are really working hard to keep their head above water in the corporate world, and many really looking to improve their health and fitness, really tuning into their bodies, really sort of dovetailing all of that with their emotional and physical, psychological needs. So thank you so much for bringing this perspective.
No, a pleasure. And I think it's so important that we all learn to be the best version of ourselves that we can. And that's handling all of the shocks that life throws at us. Otherwise, we're not in a position to do the things to support other people and families and so on. So it's crucial.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Revolutionise Your Love Life. I'd like to know what has been your biggest takeaway from this conversation. Do take a minute and share this with us, and visit us on our Facebook page. You can connect with me personally on my email at heather@heathergarbutt.com. If you can think of someone who will benefit from listening to this podcast, please do share it with them. If you have any feedback on how I can improve it, please do reach out to me, as I'm always keen to learn more. Thank you so much again for listening, And we'll meet again on the next episode of Revolutionise Your Love Life.